This is the Blood Red Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello and welcome to the Blood Red Podcast on the episode that we were due to be speaking about Liverpool winning their first league title in 30 years. Instead, we've plenty of transfer talk to get through and also debate and discussion on captains, players' futures as well. I'm Guy Clark and alongside me are Paul Gorst, Connor Dunn and Theo Squires. And we have, as I say, got plenty to get into. But Gorsty, start with you. You were due to obviously have been at Anfield over the weekend. Crystal Palace were meant to be the visitors. And how did it go as Liverpool secured the league title?
Dramatic scenes as Liverpool beat Crystal Palace to lift the first title. That should have been what we were all talking about today, but obviously fate has intervened. I actually think a lot of it was getting talked about like this was meant to be the game that Liverpool were going to be the champions, but I don't think it was a foregone conclusion that they would have picked up 3 points at Goodison Park, if I'm honest. That, let's face it, that would have been a huge game for Everton, as it always is, but knowing that they could have thrown a little spanner in the works would have given them a little bit more motivation. So I don't think 3 points were necessarily going to be picked up at Goodison Park, but there's no doubt it either would have been Palace or maybe Aston Villa. And that was due to be played, that Liverpool would have finally been crowned champions. As it turns out, the 30-year wait will go on. It will probably extend into June, but if this league season is allowed to carry on, then I don't think it'll go too much further than that.
No, I suppose one thing that has come out of this is that we've not been talking about permutations all too well, but that lasted about 30 seconds in this episode. Thanks for that, Gorsty. But Connor, in terms of something with the football not about, how are you finding it, mate?
Yeah, I've just been dreaming in my bed of Jordan Henderson hot stepping, hoisting the Premier League trophy aloft as everyone screamed in delight. But unfortunately, I then wake up every day. But no, it's been all right. It's just trying to think of all the different ideas and stay across everything to keep everyone updated with everybody not keeping their mouth shut over this period. So yeah, there's that and plenty of stuff going on still. So it's not been too bad, but everybody wants the football back, don't they, really?
Yeah, we are obviously craving the football back, Theo, but there have been plenty of sort of transfer rumours doing the rounds, and I suppose we'll get into them immediately. But you, so often the man on the blog, it sort of seems to be silly season starting rather prematurely.
Yeah, it's always going to be the price of Liverpool being in the situation they're in now, where they're the best team on the planet. They're going to be linked to players left, right and centre. And then you've got no football. What else can we talk about? Almost want the transfer window to be open now so something can actually happen. But it's just speculation. And then you look into it, it's like, well, the clubs can't really do anything because if you're not allowed to travel, you can't have players flying over for medical or going over to do talks. So it's all just in limbo waiting for everything to resolve itself. It's quite a weird situation to be in.
And even in this situation, of course, the one man who continues to be linked with Liverpool is RB Leipzig's centre forward, the Germany number 9, Timo Werner. And we got quotes today from Leipzig's sporting director basically saying that we can't look into a foggy crystal ball, that the situation it finds itself in right now, people who own these football clubs, you have businesses, economic impact will come out of this, and transfer fees therefore can't really be spoken about. But it does, even through all of this, obviously the transfer window isn't officially open, but even through this situation, Timo Werner is continually still being linked.
Yeah, I mean, as Theo says, you'd expect that to kind of continue and if anything, get more intense, don't you, with the fact that there's not a whole lot of football to debate and discuss. So the next best thing is transfer rumours, and there's an insatiable appetite for that online, and we know about that ourselves through our daily blogs, and we see the numbers. So transfer talk is always going to be part of the agenda, even when there's no football. So I expect Liverpool's name will continue to be linked with dozens of players before the actual opening of the transfer window. It remains to be seen whether the football authorities take a view on whether that's going to be pushed back to the beginning of July or whether the transfer window will open in June when teams are still playing in the domestic leagues. It's an unprecedented situation, so who knows what the actual answer is at the moment. It's all speculation. But as you say, Timo Werner continues to be linked with Liverpool. I've said it a couple of times now, it's becoming a little bit of an open secret, isn't it? Liverpool have yet to make any formal overtures towards him, we're led to believe. But why wouldn't he be on Liverpool's radar? He's a top-class Germany international striker, capable of playing in a few positions. Liverpool are a bit short in that department if the front three are out. You've either got Divock Origi, who's maybe a couple of rungs below that kind of quality. Xherdan Shaqiri hasn't played all season. Looks like he could be off in the summer. So, it's only going to be natural when it continues to be linked with Liverpool. And while Liverpool are remaining tight-lipped on the situation, everyone at Leipzig seems to be willing to talk and debate and discuss. So it's only going to stay in the news as it stays now. But I think Liverpool do have interest, and they will be sounding out Leipzig at some stage. But I think that is pretty much on the back burner for now at Liverpool.
Yeah, I don't know about yourself. Looking into these rumours as and how they sort of come out, there seems to be clause and counter clause all the time in terms of the value that he would actually be worth when the deadlines for all of these are. It is a very sort of complicated scenario that it seems as though will eventually play out.
Yeah, well, particularly with the contract clauses and how much he might be worth or how much he might be able to be bought for, chops and changes almost every day. But the widely reported clause is £51 million, but that has to be activated by all accounts and by all reports in international press by the end of April. That certainly isn't going to be happening now because nobody's going to be moving before the end of April, let alone buying players. It's just funny how it all plays out, really. And that's about all there is for his contract clause at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose it's a weird one as well, Theo, in terms of what the sports director is saying. I hadn't personally considered that there will be obviously economic impacts come out of the situation we find ourselves in, and that is obviously going to impact on football. We have spoken about even Liverpool player contracts that are coming up for renewal. Just wonder how actually it could affect things if sort of prices and everything do go down.
It's an interesting one because you're looking at most clubs, they'll be badly affected by now to play football. There is a lot of money they're going to miss out on. You'd say Liverpool are probably better protected than most clubs just because of their status and all the deals. They've still got this big Nike contract they're about to start, so they're going to have a lot of money there. They're not going to miss out and be affected too much as other clubs are. But with Leipzig, if this release clause does exist and it expires at the end of April and no clubs are able to make a move, then Leipzig can set that price at whatever they want. If you're looking at these quotes from the sporting director as well, he's not just about Timo Werner, so it's not as though he's just trying to get a few extra million on the asking price. He said it's affecting them for players coming in as well. I know they've got a couple of players they've got on loan who he's saying, well, we now don't know if we'll be able to afford them because we don't know what state we'll be in by the time all this is over. And that's Leipzig, and they're still a big club in the Bundesliga. They're looking to qualify for the Champions League. It's affecting teams like that. Then it's going to be across the continent. Number of teams now, they don't know if they're going to in Europe or they don't know where it's going to finish because they don't know what's going to happen this season. If the season doesn't finish, it's all up in the air, and you can see where clubs are having to hold back a bit. But then we've got to break it down and remember it's just football, isn't it? It's just transfers. Life and death is more important than time. Health's more important. There's a reason clubs aren't going to be focusing about it and worrying about that until it's time to actually be considering that sort of thing again.
Yeah, and Gorsley, you said before that it's sort of become a bit of an open secret with Timo and Liverpool. I mean, this has been going, this transfer link, probably best part of 2 years, if not even longer. It does seem as though it is quite ridiculous how it continues to just take different little mini steps each time. Even when he was at Tottenham recently and scored the goal there for Zig, to straight out ask him, do you want to join Liverpool? To which he wasn't very sort of reticent to ask. He did openly sort of come out and say, well, if I went there, I'd still have improving to do.
Yeah, he's been quite about it, actually, isn't he, to be fair. Which kind of leads into that point of it being a little bit of an open secret. Liverpool kind of stayed away from making an offer a couple of years back because of the development that they thought Brewster was going to be able to make. Obviously, injury and circumstance have limited that quite a bit, and he's gone out on loan to Swansea. So that has, in theory, opened up a place in the squad when you consider that Daniel Sturridge left in the summer and Brewster was maybe meant to come in and take his place. Hasn't really worked out that way. But there's no doubt Liverpool do need a fourth top-class attacker just to rotate and switch, because that quality drop off when say two of the front three, if they're not playing, then that's too great a quality drop off for a club like Liverpool, who've seen just how much that can hit you. You know, you look at the Chelsea game in the FA Cup, a couple of changes, didn't they, and Liverpool went out, and they obviously got knocked out the Champions League in what's been a pretty difficult few weeks for Liverpool. So I think there's no real detriment to having top class players who are jockeying for position, rather than just your starting 11 and then your reserves.
What intrigues me most about this is we say it's an open secret, but Liverpool have been in this situation before. Like, we only need to think back to Virgil van Dijk. There was that unsavoury scenes there with Southampton, where are they tapping him up? Are they doing this all above board or not? Well, considering how vocal Werner's being, how vocal Leipzig are being, when the hands are going to be untied if this release clause expires, you've got to look at it and go, has there been something dodgy to make Werner so confident he can come out and talk about Liverpool all the time? Will Liverpool have to step back with interest, or will they come and step forward? Because it's not as though they were very vocal about their interest before the coronavirus hit. There wasn't anything going on. It was all these whispers coming from Germany, just speculating that there was interest. It's very quiet. It's all weird what's about to unfold here. And then you think, well, Liverpool have always wanted this new quality striker because of, say, Cup of Nations, Africa Cup of Nations. They're going to lose Salah, they're going to lose Mane, and that's when they need that quality replacement. But now with the season being reshuffled, what's going to happen with the Cup of Nations? Granted, it's still currently going to be in January, and there is no reason why that should affect it. If you're working the season around it, there might not be that urgency for Liverpool to go and get that forward just yet. And when we talk about Werner, it's always an attractive proposition because he's going to cost 50 million, whereas, say, Jadon Sancho will cost 100 plus, Kai's 100 plus. That clause, Werner's going to be in the same bracket there. So Liverpool make a move if they really do want to move for him? It's going to be very interesting to see what does happen there when it all does unfold.
Yeah, I was going to say before you started there, Theo, that it is definitely a transfer, of course, you said, that makes sense in terms of your African Cup of Nations. The Olympics obviously hasn't been cancelled yet, although speculation is growing about that. The fact you are going to lose Mane, you are going to lose Salah, pretty likely in January. You're going to need somebody. And telling the season workaround, I mean, there's no way you're going to buy Werner in, say, January to get him in January. You're going to want to get him in the summer and bed him in before that anywhere near happens. But you're dead right. And it's super interesting. If that clause does exist, Liverpool are going to have to pay through the nose for it if they don't move before 30th of April. So certainly an interesting to follow.
Yeah, certainly will be, and will be one that you guys, of course, on the Echo will be all across. But let's move on and change sort of tact of what we're talking about, and from a player who could be arriving to a man who's certainly already at Anfield, and that is the captain, Jordan Henderson. Connor's been dreaming about him over the last few days, as he said already. But match of the day, the BBC have obviously been continuing to put out output through the situation we find ourselves in. It started a top 10 podcast, kicked it off with captains. And on the list was Jordan Henderson, but also, of course, was Steven Gerrard. And one of the big points I took from it was Ian Wright effectively saying that because Wes Moore helped Leicester City to that little triumph in 2016, what a remarkable triumph it was, that he was in some way perhaps a better captain than Steven Gerrard, a point I imagine all three of us, or all four of us, will completely throw out.
Yeah, not really too sure what makes you a better captain, to be honest. It's always a bit of a notion that's always been a strange one to me. Does it mean that you shout more and you park orders a bit more, or the captain who leads by example and just goes out and does things and players want to kind of emulate that? It's very much a British football notion, I think. I think in other nations, I think the captain is at times your best player than someone who's, big and strong and stocky. You can weigh up the merits. It's all subjective, isn't it? I don't particularly agree with Ian Wright saying that. I think Steven Gerrard, as a captain, even captain when Wes Morgan played for Jamaica, he certainly hasn't got 100 caps for Jamaica, not that much. Yeah, I mean, certainly a notion I disagree with, to be honest, that one.
It's interesting thought, isn't it? Because I think no matter what metric you look at a captain, there is no judge where you'd say Wes Morgan is a better captain than Gerrard, apart from if only you're going on how many Premier League titles have been won. That is the only thing you can say Wes Morgan had better than Steven Gerrard in any area. Because I haven't actually listened to the podcast, but I can well imagine he's just sort of saying that, Liverpool never won it, Gerrard never managed to get Liverpool to win it. But you think of the games, finals, the titles that Gerrard dragged Liverpool to win in teams that were pretty under par, to be quite honest. He's an unbelievable captain, really, when you think of all the great captains down the years.
We say Steven Gerrard is one of the players who's been most unluckiest not to win Premier League title. Wes Morgan has to be one of the most fortunate Premier League winners ever. He's lucky to just be a Premier League player, never mind a winning captain or anything. There's no reason why he's on the Leicester City bench now, and that's just because he's
Wes Morgan.
Centre back. He's so slow and everything. You just look at Johnny Evans now. I've got a lot of time for Johnny Evans as a player, and in that defence, he looks so much better. Wes Morgan should not be in the flight, and he shouldn't have been 5 years ago. He's just a lower league defender. It's criminal making that claim from Ian Wright here.
Well, I was going to say, and I suppose to level it out with what Ian Wright did say that Gerrard, as you were sort of alluding to, was a brilliant captain. He did it in 2005. But I think he probably picked the wrong person to sort of label that if you haven't won a Premier League title, that you're not as great a captain. Because as you said, Connor, just the inspirational and Gorsty, what you say, the great captain in British football and the British football consciousness of being that leader, being the talisman. He did it for so many years for Liverpool. Of when Liverpool were in a poor situation, just grabbed the game by the scruff neck, made sure Liverpool got what they did out of it.
Oh, 100%. Gerard Houllier actually took the captaincy off Sami Hyypiä to give it to Steven Gerrard in 2003, I think. Because he saw someone who perhaps needed that armband to kind of give him that responsibility rather than just reckless abandon and whatever else. It's, as I say, it's a subjective thing, isn't it? Debating the qualities of a captain, you can debate the qualities of ball, and they're a little bit easier to define. So for me, it's just a strange one. As Connor says, it is literally just, Wes Morgan won a Premier League title, Steven Gerrard didn't, so he's the better captain. I don't think of any Liverpool player who played with Gerrard as their captain who wouldn't say that he wasn't a world-class leader and player.
Yeah, just on that point, exactly. You think every single player that ever talks about Gerrard includes him in their All 11, includes him as like they need in their team, they want to play with, because he is the player that just makes teams thrive, gel, provides something extra that just nobody else has. And it's just crazy. I can't imagine Wes Morgan in a FA Cup final at Wembley banging screamers, chipping, but it just doesn't happen, does it? So I mean, again, he's just picked the wrong person. It's just a mad claim.
Should I 2-foot Wes Morgan again? How many Leicester players are going to be saying? Yeah, Wes Morgan was the best centre back I ever played with. Do you remember the year they won the league? They weren't getting clean sheets, were they? Claudio Ranieri came out and said, "When we finally get a clean sheet, I'm going to take you out for pizza." He's not a good defender. I'm going to keep making this point. He's not good.
I think they got to October, as you say, without getting that pizza, and then obviously did get it. But by the end of the season, did sort of shut the back door and did keep a few shutouts. Let's not get all too bogged down on Wes Morgan. Theo obviously not his biggest fan, but it brings us on to the man who's the current incumbent of the captaincy, the man who took over from Steven Gerrard and Jordan Henderson. Which, by this argument, you have to win a Premier League title to be a great captain. When Jordan Henderson is able to lift that trophy, just how high will he be ranked in terms of lists of captains, Gorsty? Because he may not be the best player on the team, but we've seen certainly through the last few weeks with him not being there, just how much of an influence he does have.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's very much. Is he a better captain than he is a fielder? It's tough, isn't it? I mean, where we rank, he'd have to be right up there in terms of captains and skippers and all that kind of talk. He wouldn't be in the top 5 Liverpool midfielders of all time, because I think there's plainly been players who've got more ability than him, and I think he'd probably admit that himself. But in terms of being the captain and the leader, he sets the tone around the dressing room. He sets the tempo on the pitch every single game. There's more determined than him, and he always wins that 50-50, keeps Liverpool ticking, keeps them on the front foot. And Liverpool have missed him when he's been out over the last few weeks. So he's had the best season of his career, no doubt about it. European Cup winning captain, there's not many others at Liverpool who can do that. So in terms of actually being a Liverpool captain, he's going to be right up there with whoever, Souness, Phil Thompson, Steven Gerrard, whoever you want to name. I wouldn't put him alongside Gerrard and Souness as a player, but as a captain, certainly up there, yeah.
Is that perhaps he's overriding one of definitely his best qualities, is the fact that he knows even what his own limitations are. He knows the limitless nature of the whole Liverpool squad, and therefore will push the players around him, if he doesn't feel that they're getting what they should be out of a game, to even greater heights to make sure they do get more out of themselves.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, isn't it? I think, what Gorsi was saying there about him setting the standards, he absolutely understands how much to push, when not to push, and just to be able to make this Liverpool team absolutely thrive. And that is probably one of the best sort of attributes you can have as a captain, isn't it? By pushing, we talk about Van Dijk so much improving all of the players around him, but you think probably Henderson improves every single player on the pitch. They obviously all have their own little teams in certain ways. You have like the back line team, you have the front line team, all kind of work together. But Henderson is the kind of one that is pushing everybody all at the same time. And yeah, as you say, he understands his own limits and he realizes how good people are around him. He can push them on to be absolutely world class. And I think he, has played a massive part. Klopp has obviously got so much to do with this, but he's played a massive part in actually getting on the pitch and stamping the manager's identity through the team.
I quite like it as well. Is Gerrard as a captain was the inspiration, wasn't he? He was always the best player, the best quality, and the teammates would up their games because they couldn't let Steven Gerrard down. He was an inspiration to play alongside, and you had to try and be as good as possible to match him. With Jordan Henderson, he's had so many setbacks throughout his career. Like, he could have easily ended up going to Fulham in that swap deal for Clint Dempsey, and he keeps coming back. He keeps getting written off, and now you can't write him off anymore. He's a Champions League winning captain. He's going to be a Premier League winning captain. It's that inspiration, but the complete polar opposite sort of thing. Like, you see those setbacks and how much he's had to fight back to achieve everything. You can't be not see that as an inspiration, and probably get to those levels from the mates as well. It's like if Henderson's fighting and he's reaching these standards, there is no reason why anyone else on the pitch can't do exactly the same.
Yeah, well, just a quick one before we move on from the Henderson point. I just wondered for you guys what the moment was where you realised actually just how brilliant Jordan Henderson could be for Liverpool. Because even now there are still some who, I have to say, bafflingly don't think he's as brilliant as the likes of us sort of talk about him. But I'm wondering if it away at Southampton last year where he moved from the dying position back into the box-to-box role he'd initially fulfilled, whether it was winning the Champions League, lifting the Club World Cup Championship, or this recent spell out of the side. Just wondering, the penny dropped for all of you guys. Start with you, Gordy.
I don't think there's been one particular moment, really, because he's not someone who does something out of the extraordinary like Steven Gerrard might have done against West Ham in 2016 FA Cup final. Never really been one of those players. He's almost someone who wins you over with his consistency every single week, and it's not in terms of he's done something out the top draw. It's incredible that made you take that back. It's more just every week. Henderson was good again today. Henderson had a good game, but Henderson was excellent. Yeah, Henderson's played well, and it's just that consistency really, and he's been that way for years. And I certainly think since getting over the line in that Champions League final last season, it's kind of given him an air of authority. Maybe now he believes that he's capable of leading this Liverpool team to trophies. I think that might be the moment. In terms of him looking for stand-up moments on the pitch, I think it's more just his enduring consistency.
Yeah, I couldn't actually agree more with that, to be honest. I think over his whole Liverpool career, probably his rise has just been so consistent, as you said. When you first go back to that Clint Dempsey thing, he's not really in the team, going to get sold, and then just persistently good, works so hard on the pitch, works so hard off the pitch, and just has improved himself as a player and has just improved the things he knows he's good at and the things he knows obviously he's bad at. It's just time after time over the last couple of years, last couple of seasons has been when he's really started to flourish. But as Gorsi said, I don't think it's been any particular game. It's just been a really, really consistent, steady, excellent performance time after time from Henderson.
Yeah, and I suppose when you sort of just quickly, just even on that point, and even before he got the captain's armband, we talked back at the title push 6 years ago, 2014, that even if he hadn't got that suspension at the back end of the season, he could have. He was even still then not the captain, but still was the driving force in the midfield with Steve Gerrard's legs obviously beginning to wilt. What he provided that energy and still had that knack of getting the best out of the forward players.
Yeah, I think in 13-14, he really showed his quality as this box-to-box midfielder. He was getting a lot of goals and people were starting to take notice of him. 14-15, he was captained on occasion. It was obvious he was going to be getting that armband off Steven Gerrard in the long term. Liverpool knew Gerrard wouldn't be staying at the club and the decision had been made. And he was still performing. Then Jurgen Klopp comes in, and I think in 15-16, Henderson had a lot of injuries. I think he was on the bench like the Europa League final, and he almost got forgotten about. It's like there's a new manager comes in, and he's a big name, Jurgen Klopp. Does Henderson have a future as part of this team? And he was almost left behind. He had to be this number 6 midfielder. And you think, oh, he's only there because there's no one else to do it. That's when fans started to think, why is he in this team again? But then you see his quality. Like last season, he can go and be a box-to-box midfielder again and be absolutely amazing at it. And then this year he can be a number 6 again. And you realise how good he is. It's like football goes through this spell of when you really appreciate your defensive players and when you don't. But I can go against what these other two have said and pick a game for me. And it isn't just winning the Champions League finals. Granted, that gave him his confidence and everything. But I was at Anfield when Liverpool drew with Bayern Munich last year. And it was a 0-0 draw. And you think, oh, that's not a game people are going to remember. But there had been a bit of criticism for Henderson before that game. People questioning whether he should be a team. Because obviously Fabinho was starting to find his feet. You have Gini Wijnaldum doing so well. There's always been such love for Naby Keita and that desire for him to prove himself. Oxlade-Chamberlain was coming back. But Henderson was superb in that game. This is Bayern Munich, one of the biggest names on the continent. Maybe that was the game when there was that start of belief that, yes, I deserve to be on this scene. I am the captain of this club and we can go on to bigger and better things. Like it's all very, very well being Liverpool captain for a team that doesn't expect the Champions League final and goes to lose to Real Madrid. But when you go and stand toe-to-toe with a big name like Bayern Munich and prove yourself to be one of the best players on that pitch, you can then take that level. And that was February, March last year. He just got better and better from that moment, and we've not really seen a slump since, and hopefully that can continue for many years to come.
Yeah, hopefully that will be the case. Well, to wrap us up then for this episode on the Blood Red podcast, just going to talk through some of the other players and what winning the Premier League title might mean for them. And actually, for some, it might mean the opportunity to perhaps seek horizons new. Connor, I know you've sort of got some thoughts on this, and obviously one man who's been in and out of the news recently, with contract talks going on. You even put the question to Jurgen Klopp yourself and got a rather flat answer. But it's Gini Wijnaldum, and I mean, if he gets that Premier League winners' medal, what is there left for him?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what a lot of people are thinking, isn't it? And I did ask Klopp, and yeah, he basically give me an answer, but I didn't really expect him to be fair. I just wanted to see what he said, just in case. You never know. But
don't ask the question, you don't get the reply, mate. So
exactly. Do you not buy a ticket? You do not win the raffle, to quote a classic FIFA commentator. But no, in all seriousness, with Wijnaldum, so he has got 1 year left on his contract. So if he wins the Champions League, he's obviously won the Super Cups, won the Club World Cup, he's won the Premier League. You'd be thinking, I'm a really good player. I'm 29 years old. I've won the biggest trophies there is to win with this club. Why don't I just go somewhere else and do it? Why don't I go win La Liga and the Champions League or the Serie A League? I'm not saying that we're now go anywhere, because by all accounts, and by all accounts of James Pearce at The Athletic, formerly of this parish, he said that contract talks are ongoing between the parties, like Wijnaldum's people and Liverpool. Both parties are happy and quite relaxed about the situation. So he could well sign a contract. But I think he is one you'd look at and maybe not be the first name you think of that is going to leave this summer, but might be a surprise and might actually go anyway.
With Wijnaldum, with like the recent quotes from him, he's saying how he's had to almost play within himself, like he's had to become this defensive player. And he is good at it. He does a really good job. But then you go and see him on international duty and he's scoring all these goals for the Netherlands. He must be thinking sometimes it would be great to play for a manager that lets him just play like that, not worry about the defensive side, so he can get the plaudits he really deserves. Like if you went to, say, Italy, you're looking at him being in that Juventus midfield because they like that sort of midfielder, don't they? They don't go into the young, promising players. They try and get these like finished goods on free transfers. And in a year's time, Wijnaldum fits that bill perfectly. Well, Barcelona, they're in a bit of transition. Maybe that's the sort of player they could look at. And you'd look at him, and if he was in one of these teams, he'd be their star midfielder. It's only in England at Liverpool where you sort of don't value him as much as you perhaps would elsewhere, because all the creativity comes from the fullbacks, and he's got to play within himself as part of the team.
You're talking there about player going around the continent, and you as well, Theo, talking about how he's gone from being an attacking player, being used more defensively. Obviously, it's a compatriot of his, a former Holland international, but it reminded me of a player like Clarence Seedorf, who went and won the Champions Leagues in the end during his career and played in a very sort of similar role to Gini Wijnaldum. But it would be a huge disappointment for Liverpool, wouldn't it, Gorsty, if Wijnaldum were to decide that it were time for Postecoglou?
It would. I think as well, he's not someone who naturally gravitate towards when you're watching a football game. So I don't think he's going to be one who's going to be naturally scouted, by these big clubs. I think if you watch him week in, week out, and you're paying attention to him, you know what he does and what he's good at and great at. But he's not someone who you'd be casually flicking through the channels and you'd see him and you'd automatically think he's a must-have. So hopefully that kind of hides away from the likes of Barcelona and Real Madrid scouts, if you like. But with his contract coming up, I suppose the ball is very much in his court, and the longer that drags on, the less he's going to be worth for Liverpool in terms of selling him. So I think it's going to be a big couple of months actually for Wijnaldum and Liverpool. And if he goes into the next season with his contract situation still unresolved, then Liverpool are going to be hugely at risk of losing him for nothing.
It's interesting when you look at the contracts, because I think there was always that belief before Jurgen Klopp signed his deal that he was going to win the Premier League and then that's his job done. He's taken Liverpool to this level and it'd be up to the next manager to pick it up, take it on and rebuild a team. And with quite a few of the players, there was that belief as well. Granted, the front three, they signed up, but say you could see James Milner moving on. But Wijnaldum's really the only one left. You think, well, you've done that first task now. What's next left for you? Like Klopp stay. Do you stay with the manager or not? It's sort of rewritten what Liverpool are going to be doing in the next 2 years. And he's the one player that hasn't signed up to it all yet, going for this next chapter.
It's interesting, isn't it? Again, as you say, because I think Liverpool would be gutted to lose him. Either way, either being paid for him, especially on a free, because I think, as Gorsey was saying, if you do watch him every week, you see how I've never really seen anyone keep the ball quite as well as Gini Wijnaldum does. And just things like that you really appreciate when you're watching Liverpool all the time and you're watching somebody all the time and you're watching players and you're thinking, oh, actually, he is really excellent at this sort of thing. And I think he obviously, as Theo pointed out rightly, he goes to Holland and scores the goals. It is obviously a totally different system. And I think he probably must understand that. And, he works so well in this Klopp system, but that's not necessarily to say he would work in a different system. Although he does for Holland, the different styles and different players playing football, it doesn't necessarily always mean he's going to be a wonderful player everywhere.
Well, that's when you can point out, like Ronald Koeman's got this clause, doesn't he, that he could become Barcelona manager after the Euros, or the Netherlands will let him leave or something like that. Maybe that's a timing thing. So say when the Euros is over, his contract's up. Does he just go with Koeman to say Barcelona? That's one to keep an eye on. Maybe it's just speculation here, but you never know.
So he's two-footed. Wes Morgan, he just let off grenade right at the end of it.
Transfer agreement for his own blog.
I'm not even on today, am I? You got me right today. Yeah. Every day for the next couple of weeks, Gini Wijnaldum future latest.
Yeah, classic behaviour there from. Exactly, yeah. Classic behaviour from gentlemen. Thanks a lot for joining us for the latest Blood Red podcast. Wherever you get your audio on demand, it is always appreciated. And also, if you're joining us on YouTube, if there's anything in particular, guys, to talk about, leave us a comment or get in touch through the Blood Red podcast Facebook group. It is always much appreciated. Cheers. Thanks a lot, guys. And as I say, thanks to you for listening as well. Until next time, bye for now.